Hey guys, Suz here, back with another keto dinner ideas video. Today is all about making keto meatballs. We're doing 4 different keto meatball dishes today. If you're new here, we try to make these videos every single week to give you a little motivation, inspiration to get in the kitchen and get your keto cooking on. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to join the crew. Let's get into the video. First up, we tried this dish from Rule.me. They're low-carb, sweet and sour meatballs. These were definitely very sweet. So to start with, in a medium-sized mixing bowl, I have 1 pound of lean ground beef. I added 1 large egg, 1/4 of a cup grated Parmesan cheese, and 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder. Then I'm just getting in there with my hands and mixing this all together really well until it's nice and combined. And for this recipe, we're looking to form about 30 little tiny mini meatballs, and it does recommend using a tablespoon to measure those out. So as you can see here, I did use a little tablespoon to measure out the first couple just to get a feel of how large or small they needed to be. And then I am just adding them straight to my skillet. And after you figure out the size, then you can just kind of eyeball it. Here they all are. I think I actually had a couple extra. Put them in a pan over medium to medium-high heat, and we're just searing each side of them and using a slotted spoon to just turn these over to the other side now. I did try to use tongs on these, but that will of course squish your meatballs, so slotted spoon was the best method here. And I did go ahead and put the lid on these to just let the steam cook them all the way through the middle before moving them to a separate little metal dish while we get ready to make our sweet and sour sauce. Now in the same skillet, without draining it, I added 1.5 cups of water, and I'm just whisking this and bringing up the temperature on that to get all of those little cooked bits off the bottom of the pan. To that, I'm adding 1/4 of a cup apple cider vinegar along with 3 tablespoons of soy sauce. If you don't want to use soy, you could use liquid aminos or coconut aminos. To that, I'm using some unsweetened ketchup. I love this one from Primal Kitchen, 1/3 of a cup. And then it says to add a cup of granulated erythritol. I did that, and I do feel like this recipe was too sweet. I think I will cut that in half next time. Then I'm just whisking this together really well to make sure that's all nice and dissolved. And I did go ahead and bring it up to just a light bubbling simmer before sprinkling 1/2 teaspoon xanthan gum on the surface. I always like to just let it sit for a second. And then I went ahead and whisked that in as well, and this is just to help that sauce thicken up. Then I turned the temperature down on this and let it simmer for about 10 minutes until it was thickened some before adding my meatballs back into the skillet. And I just whisked those in to get them nice and fully coated, and I did let them simmer in there at a lower temperature for about another 10 minutes before getting ready to plate this up. And to do that, I just steamed some cauliflower rice in the microwave with a little bit of butter and salt and pepper. These look excellent. I topped them with a little bit of chives and sesame seeds just for effect's sake, and they grew on me the more I ate them. But then by the end of it, I felt like that kind of parched taste in my mouth because they were just too sweet from the erythritol. So I think the next time that I make this recipe, I'll actually make it a little bit more savory. Cut that sweetener in half, or maybe even use like Swerve brown sugar substitute. I think would make a better sauce for this, but depends on how sweet you like it. If you like it really sweet and the erythritol doesn't bother you, then you will love this. If not, you might not like this one as much. Like I said, it did grow on me though. Next up, we threw together some meatball zucchini boats. These were absolutely fabulous. This is based on a recipe from Delish. I will have a link down below. So to start with, I have 3 medium-sized zucchini, and I'm just gonna cut the ends off of these and kind of get them to more of a uniform length. And then we're gonna slice these lengthways down the middle. And I just used a little kitchen tablespoon to scoop out the insides. You wanna get all the seeds and all of the gushy kind of flesh out of the middle of the zucchini. And just repeat this process on all 6 of these halves. And then I went ahead and lined a baking sheet with nonstick foil, laid out my zucchini halves on there, and I have a seasoning blend here of 1/2 teaspoon Italian seasoning, 1/2 teaspoon garlic powder, and about 1/4 teaspoon sea salt. And I am just mixing that together with my fingers, taking a little extra virgin olive oil and drizzling that over all of our zucchini halves. And I did go ahead and kind of spread that out a little. You don't have to, but I'm just kind of wanted it on there a little bit more evenly. And then I'm sprinkling the seasoning mixture over all of them. Topping it with a little fresh ground black pepper. And then you're gonna go ahead and pre-cook these. Put them in the oven at 350 for 15 minutes. While those are in there cooking, I have 1 pound of ground beef. I'm adding 1/4 cup freshly chopped flat leaf parsley, 1 large egg, teaspoon of minced garlic, 1/2 teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes, 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt, and then I'm just getting in there with my hands and combining these really, really well. And we're gonna form these into about 24 little mini meatballs, but I'm just gonna do it straight from the bowl into the skillet. So I have my skillet over medium heat, and I'm adding a couple tablespoons of avocado oil. You can use whichever type of cooking oil you prefer. You can see I just pulled our zucchini out of the oven. I'm gonna stick that to the side, and I am just kind of rolling these meatballs up and putting them into the skillet once my oil is hot. And by the time I have them all in there, it's time to flip the first ones over. Again, using my slotted spoon to turn those over, just to make sure that they are nice and browned on both sides. I'm not really worried about getting these cooked all the way through perfectly, because we are going to be putting these in the oven later. Once I have those looking pretty browned on all sides, I'm going to add some sauce. Now the original recipe called for 2 cups of marinara sauce. I'm opting to cut that in half to save on carbs, and I'm just using 1 cup of Rayo's marinara, adding that straight to our skillet, and just stirring all of our meatballs around into that and letting them simmer for probably 5 to 10 minutes, just so everything's nice and married together. Then coming over here to the countertop, I have my zucchini halves, and I am just putting about 4 meatballs into each one with some sauce, and then topping them with some mozzarella cheese. And the recipe calls for splitting up a cup of mozzarella cheese. I probably used more like 1.5 cups because I really like cheese. Then I actually popped them under the broiler in the oven for about 4 to 5 minutes to get them nice and brown on top. Here's what they look like plated up. These were excellent. I just topped them with a little bit of grated Parmesan cheese. The zucchini wasn't overly cooked. It still had enough of a firm texture that even when I reheated these left over the next day, they were still excellent and not overly mushy. Next up, we tried these awesome buffalo chicken meatballs from Cast Iron Keto. I will link their original recipe down below. So to start with, in a medium mixing bowl, I have 1 pound of ground chicken, and I'm adding to that 1/2 of a medium red bell pepper that I minced in a little processor, probably equaled out to 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup minced bell pepper. Now they called for green onions, and I did not have any, so I just added a tablespoon of freeze-dried chives. To that, I'm also adding 2 tablespoons of avocado oil mayo. This is the one by Chosen Foods. 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, teaspoon of paprika, and 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt. And because chicken, the texture of it, it just mixes pretty easy. You know, it's pretty, I don't know what's the word I want to use for it, like gummy when you're mixing it together. I found that using a large kitchen spoon worked really well to get this all mixed in fine. And again, we're gonna shape meatballs out of this, but we're gonna do it and add them straight to the pan. So to a cast iron skillet, I added a couple tablespoons butter over medium heat. And then we just shaped our meatballs. You're going for 16 meatballs for this recipe. Browned them on one side, using the slotted spoon to flip those over. And for the chicken ones, I did flip these a couple of times until I got them nice and browned and cooked all the way through on all sides. I did use a meat thermometer to make sure that they were to at least 165 internal temp on each of those. And then I'm adding 1 tablespoon of butter back to our pan, along with 1 cup of Frank's hot sauce. And if you don't like yours as spicy, just add more butter, use a milder sauce. And I'm just using the spoon and mixing these around until that butter melts and it all combines together nicely. And I did bring the temperature up on this to a nice bubbling simmer and let those continue to cook in that for about 10 more minutes. Plated up, I steamed some cauliflower in the microwave, ran it through a processor with a little salt, pepper, garlic powder to make kind of a mashed cauliflower. Put our meatballs on top with a little bit of their hot sauce, some blue cheese crumbles, and some chopped up celery. This was so freaking good. But again, if you don't like spicy food, you're gonna want to use a milder sauce for this. But I love loved these. I'll definitely be making these keto meatballs again in the future. Last up this week, we have an original recipe that I'm still working on, so I don't have it written out for you quite yet because I want to tweak it some more. It is a keto meatball and Italian sausage bake. So to start with, I have 1 pound of ground beef, added a 1/2 cup of ground pork rind crumbs, 1/3 of a cup grated Parmesan cheese, 1 large egg, pouring in 1/4 cup beef broth, about 1/8 teaspoon nutmeg, 1/4 teaspoon cumin, 1/2 teaspoon garlic powder, 1/4 teaspoon sea salt, 1/4 teaspoon ground black pepper, and about 1.5 tablespoons of chopped Italian flat leaf parsley. And then I'm just getting there with my hands and mixing this all together. And we're gonna form this into meatballs as well. And for these meatballs, I ended up with 32. So to a large pot, I have a couple tablespoons of avocado oil. You could use whatever kind of cooking oil you like. Formed my meatballs, added them straight to the pot, letting them brown nicely on one side before flipping them over with our slotted spoon, letting them continue to cook on the other side. We're gonna finish this recipe in the oven, so I'm not worried about getting them all the way cooked through. Scooping them out with our slotted spoon to a separate dish. Now to this, I'm adding some Italian sausage. I already have it chopped up here into little bite-sized pieces. This is 1 pound of just regular mild Italian sausage. Make sure you check your carbs carefully on your Italian sausage. This was 4 links equaled 1 pound, and I'm just adding that straight to my pot, and we're gonna brown this really well on both sides too. And after it's mostly browned on all sides, I'm gonna go ahead and add 1/2 cup of sliced white onion straight on top of our sausage, and we are still over medium heat, along with 1 medium green bell pepper that's sliced up, which probably also was about 1/2 cup. And we're just gonna toss these around and saute this for about 5 minutes just to let our veggies start softening up some before adding 1/2 tablespoon of minced garlic right on top. And I went ahead and stirred that in for another 30 to 45 seconds until it was nice and really fragrant. I'm pouring our meatballs back into the pan and just kind of mixing these all together gently before adding a can of crushed tomatoes. This is a 14.5 ounce can. Make sure that you get some with no sugar added, along with 1 teaspoon of tarragon and 1/2 cup of white cooking wine, adding in 1 bay leaf that we'll pull out before we eat, and stirring this all together. Now I am going to bring up the temperature on this a little bit to let some of that cooking wine evaporate out of our pot. We just want the flavor, but we don't want all of the liquid. I'll probably let that simmer for around 10 minutes after I did that. And then we're going to transfer it all to a casserole dish. I believe this is a 2.5 quart just oval dish, and I'm just pouring our whole mixture into this, making sure I have an eye on where that bay leaf is, but I'm going to leave it in to cook in the oven just to get all the flavor from it. And topping it with about 1.5 cups of shredded mozzarella cheese. I popped this whole thing into a 350-degree oven for about 25 minutes. And here's what it looks like when it comes out. Now it did have a little excess liquid still on the top of it that I just grabbed with the whole casserole dish and kind of dumped some of the excess off of it. So I do want to tweak this recipe a little bit more. I originally was going to plate it up over zoodles, but at the last minute I decided to eat it just as is because it does have the peppers and the tomatoes in it, and I felt like I didn't need the extra vegetables this evening. But you totally could plate this over a cauliflower rice or steamed zucchini spirals, zoodles. This was excellent tasting. My husband loved it, but again, I do want to keep tweaking this recipe a little bit as it was a little bit more juicy than I would have liked it to be. But just another idea for you of how you can make some homemade keto meatballs and throw them together for a satisfying dinner that's more like a comfort food than a diet. And there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's keto dinner ideas video. If you did, make sure you give us a thumbs up, please. Share this video with any of your friends that are trying to follow a keto diet, live a low carb lifestyle. And until next time, bye guys.